What up, Pittsburgh Steelers fans? Matty here with another episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. Today we're talking the Steelers record. We are talking the Steelers predictions for their record to close out the season. And I'm going to talk about their strength of schedule with that theme in mind. All right, so the Steelers actually are in an interesting spot now where they've gone in to the bye 6-2. They come out of that in the next couple of days when they go up against the Washington Commanders. Now, if you look at the rest of the season ahead, the Steelers have the third strongest strength of schedule. What do I mean by that? That means if you look at all the opponents that they've got left to play, they got the toughest schedule at the third toughest at 5.66. If you round it to the it's 5.7, 0.57, I should say. Cleveland is 0.57 as well. So about the same. That's because they're both in the same division primarily. Baltimore's up there with 5.59 themselves. So that is because the Steelers play the Bengals twice, they play Cleveland twice, they play Baltimore twice, then obviously we know they go against Kansas City, Washington, and Philadelphia. Now, Kansas City are 8-0, Washington is 7-2, and Philadelphia is 6-2. So that is a very tough schedule that they play. But that's a tough schedule on paper, right? Tough schedule on paper. When we talk about the Steelers and what they've done this season, they've also had it in an interesting situation in terms of the teams they've faced. Now, they've faced an indie team that's 4-5 that are going through a lot of shakeups. So let's call it almost 50%. They played the Atlanta Falcons, top of their division. They played Denver, who have a positive record at 5-4. Now, they played both New York teams. That obviously we can see that that's a sort of an easier go for them. From that perspective. But when we look at what the Steelers can do down the stretch, there's a lot of opportunity there. And obviously Dallas that they played, and they're not a good team this year. But the good thing for the Steelers is the Steelers are playing divisional games now. That's the difference. The Steelers now are going into the situation where they're playing teams that they know, right? They know the Cleveland Browns. They know the Cincinnati Bengals. And they know the Baltimore Ravens. They've done pretty well in the division over the last few years, as well as I'm going to bring that up on the screen for you. And that's going to help them as well, right? That's going to help them big time, because when we think about what they're going to be able to do down the stretch, I think we've got some weird ad playing for you guys right now. But when we think about what the Steelers can do down the stretch, it's going to come down to being able to turn up to play and being able to understand what the task is ahead of them, which is why I really like the trades that they had, that they made right before the deadline in Preston Smith and in Mike Williams. But when you look at the division the last few years and where they're sitting first right now. Yes, they finished third last year in division, third the year before, but then it was second, then it was first. They know how to play these divisional games, and that's going to be really important, as I say, down the stretch. So when we look at the strengths of schedule over the rest of the Steelers season right now, as I said, they go Washington at home at Washington, play at home against Baltimore, then they go away to the Cleveland Browns and away to the Bengals, then they return fire back at home against the Browns, then they go to Philadelphia, which is still in the same state, it's only up the road, then they go to Baltimore, and then they have Kansas City at home, and then they have finish at home against the Bengals. So how do I predict that's going to go for the Steelers? It's going to be a tough game against Washington, but I think the Steelers defense can get it done, particularly Mike Tomlin. I think it's 30-4. I think it is now against rookie quarterbacks. So that's going to help him, but Jaden Daniels is definitely a good rookie quarterback. Baltimore at home, that's going to be a little bit brutal for the Steelers. I got to say, but they are coming back off, off an away game and off the bye. Technically, I think they can get up in that game. Then you find that the Steelers are going to be 8-2. I think they probably drop Cleveland away in Cleveland. I hate to say it. The Bengals game is a toss-up. I'm going to say they lose that one as well. So they go on a two-loss run. Then beat Cleveland at home. I'm going to say they lose in a close one at Philadelphia. I think they can beat Baltimore away, but let's say they lose that one as well. So now they've lost 4 games plus their 2, so they're 6. And then I think they can win out. I do. I honestly think they can win out. Particularly, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are beatable, particularly in Pittsburgh, cold, Christmas Day, Christmas miracle. I think the Steelers can go 11-6. I think they could go as high as 13-4, and they could also go as low as 10-7. But I do think it's that 11 or 12 win mark based on what we've seen so far this season, and when we look at the strength of schedule that the Steelers have, but it being based in divisional opponents. As I said, Steelers could go down the division. They could win. Like I'm tipping them to win 4 of those games in the division. They could do as well as winning all 6. They clean sweep that. That's 12 wins based on the wins that they've got right now. And 12-5, I think, can win this division, particularly if you're beating Baltimore twice and you've got the tiebreakers there and the amount of divisional games you're going to win. So. And obviously, they dropped one against Cleveland too. So that's going to be the big difference in who finishes atop the AFC North. So don't buy into things you hear in the media. I've heard a little bit this week around the strength of schedule. It doesn't mean anything. Yes, the Steelers have tough opponents. They've got 3 divisional rivals that want to kick their butt. They've got a Philadelphia Eagles team up the road that also are going to be in there in the mix in the playoffs and competing with a Washington team. So really, actually, the Steelers games against Washington and the Steelers game against the Philadelphia Eagles, those 2 games together, those 2 Steelers games actually might even decide that, that division for the Commanders or for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is interesting. Likewise, Kansas City, if they drop any games, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to be situated. But Patrick Mahomes' injury, you've heard this week, is probably all right. So big game for the Steelers this week in Washington. They can get up this game. This is a good challenge, a good defense with Dan Quinn, interesting offense led by the offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury, and they've just certainly been able to do some things and score some points. But you let me know in the comments, where do you think the Steelers are going to finish based on their record of 6-2 into the bye? I'm Matty P. As always, go Steelers.